Oh, okay. We're gonna go down this route. For me, for me personally, I wouldn't say like I have my own opinions on like realism versus believability and versus like what needs to be done for storytelling. So yeah, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are not very accurate, right? They're outdated models, at least on the exterior. Like some of the body posture is pretty close to accurate. Some of like their the sizes are wrong, or some things like that. But what I think was the worst, one of the things that I'm most disappointed in a lot of times with Jurassic Park is how it sacrifices believability for sensationalism in science sometimes, where, they could still, they can still have things that are not necessarily scientifically accurate, but scientifically believable. But sometimes they just go past that and just make these really outlandish things where, it's like, I think in Jurassic World, they spliced human DNA, right? Was it the Indoraptor? No, Indominus Rex. And for me, that was just kind of like, it pulled away from the heart of Jurassic Park of like, where the first one was like, it was a horror movie, right? Where we took science, we created these dinosaurs, and then the dinosaurs got loose. It's a whole thing about like trying to manipulate nature, and how nature will just, you can't control nature in the end, really, right? And so it was a horror movie about dinosaurs, and that was really cool. But then in Jurassic World, it just kind of felt like it got a little out of hand, and they forgot what the heart of Jurassic Park was. And that was for me, at least.
For me, with the Jurassic Park, like, yes, as Gabe said, some things are inaccurate now. That part doesn't really bother me, honestly, because it's not what Jurassic Park was ever trying to be. Jurassic Park is like Gabe said, a horror movie with dinosaurs. And I enjoy it as a piece of fiction, as a really enjoyable movie. And it was partially responsible for me being inspired to be a paleontologist. And so that, I think, is more valuable than having it adhere to some sort of old standard of accuracy. Feeling that it inspired in a lot of us who are of the age now that are, getting into our careers in paleontology, I think is more important than, being 100% accurate to what the science said at the time. They did well enough. Sequels are the parts where I start getting a little like, you have to go that far. You didn't have to go that outlandish. But if we're just talking about the original, I don't really want to hold it tight to, some semblance of accuracy. I find it quite enjoyable without that. And it feels kind of unfair to fail on a movie that's 30 years old on its paleontology when we've increased our knowledge so much since then. Now, I do kind of wish, I understand in the latter sequels that they've made justifications for it, but I really wanted to see like a feathered raptor or a feathered T-Rex or something to that effect. And I'm still disappointed I didn't get it. That's okay. Get over it. So I enjoyed Jurassic Park regardless of its accuracy or not, because I'm not going to look at a fictional horror movie, is what Jurassic Park is, for paleontological accuracy.
For sure. Yeah. What about you, Isaac?
So I think I share similar feelings for sure. I think one thing that I didn't think of when I was a kid watching the movie, or even I would say even 5 or 6 years ago before I started going to school to study paleontology, I think I would enjoy seeing a lot more of what it's actually like to be a paleontologist. So if you watch the first movie, and I think a little bit of the third, they actually have, although it's not necessarily accurate of all, paleontological digs or excavations, they talk a little bit about it, or they show a little bit about what it's like to be in the field. But a lot of the later movies kind of don't do that at all. And I think when I was a kid, one of the things I was really interested in was like, why are there people out in the middle of nowhere digging for things and finding just these crazy bones that belong to, these ancient animals in the ground? And that was something that really piqued my interest and sort of got me to read books and look at pictures of actual dinosaur fossils, and then later on other types of ancient animals. I think I probably would have enjoyed seeing a little more of that. Not make it the highlight, because at the end of the day, it's about the fun. I watch Jurassic Park because I want to see people running around, running away from dinosaurs. I think that's the fun part. But at the same time, I also was interested with a little bit of the science, and it doesn't have to be, the most, I don't need a scientific paper, but I think even just showing a little bit of that process is interesting. And, even if it's, discussing a little bit about what it's actually like to be a paleontologist, I always enjoyed those parts. So
I think, I agree with you guys that it functions well as a kind of gateway into paleontology, and it doesn't necessarily have to be scientifically accurate. And it's not. And obviously our knowledge is changing over time, which means that it becomes less and less accurate as we're going forward. But moving off from the nerdy debate to the geeky debate, how do you guys feel about the Jurassic Park series becoming more actiony and less horror?
Nah. For me, like,
I have
yeah, like, for me, like, when I first saw Jurassic Park in theaters, I was 4 years old, and I was so terrified at the Velociraptor kitchen scene that I had to leave because I was just so scared. But also at the same time, because it was so scary and they kind of created these realistic dinosaurs, it drew me in too, right? The story and everything was just so great and enthralling. Even though I was scared, I still wanted to see it. In the later movies, I'm obviously older now. I'm not 4. I'm a little less scared of horror movies, but like, I just didn't get that feeling of first wonder and then terror that you get in that first movie, I remember watching Jurassic World and actually leaving the theater very disappointed because, one, I didn't feel any of the wonder that I felt in the first movie, and I actually didn't feel scared. I just felt like I was watching a big budget action movie. It did have fun moments, don't get me wrong, but it didn't pull me in, and so I missed the horror element of it. There's a lot of artistry that goes into creating good horror, and these last movies just haven't been able to reach that level.
Definitely not. I wouldn't even argue that latter movies are in the same genre as the original. Like you said, Jurassic Park itself is very much a horror movie. It's not an action adventure movie. And the narrative that it paints is from the horror tradition. And so I don't consider the latter movies like Jurassic World in the same genre as the original. And yeah, I've watched the original Jurassic Park, second one, and the third one somewhat so many times. I was slightly too young to see the original Jurassic Park in theaters, but I saw Lost World in theaters when I was like 4, and I know it's not as good, but I love it anyway. And I've watched those constantly since then. I haven't really watched Jurassic World or its sequel. Yeah, I just kind of think I view them as two separate genres, and I'm not as interested in the action adventure sort of genre that they placed it in. I don't think that that's the best fit for it. I'd be very interested if they had leaned more into the horror elements, which I think they did in the last sequel, but not to the extent that I was hoping. So
I think I very much agree with what Brittney is saying, in that I consider them two totally separate genres in terms of what the original movie was going for, and then sort of what it later became. When I go to the theaters and a new one comes out, I think I very much go with the intention of, I'm just here to see,
a movie.
Yeah, I'm just here to see,
popcorn,
dinosaurs chase people around, and whatever way that takes place, I don't leave disappointed, because I'm just kind of like, well, I kind of got what I came for, right? Like, but I certainly agree that I would very much enjoy a return to the horror aspect of it, because I think another movie that's different but also could sort of be classified, or definitely is classified, as sort of science fiction horror, although I feel the movie I'm about to mention adheres so much more closely to that, is Alien. And I enjoy sort of the idea of having to creep around and be afraid of when the monster is going to pop out. And I think the original Jurassic Park did that more and did it more effectively. So either way, I think I leave sort of coming with what I look for, but the originals, specifically the first one, I think are for me the better movies, because I like that aspect of what they were.